On a Dark Christmas Night by John Tantallon. From time to time, a story arrives that completely catches my attention. An Edinburgh family contacted me through a mutual acquaintance. They had previously lived in the Lochend area of the city and informed me of a story possibly of interest. Miss A and her husband moved into the property on Wrestlerig Crescent in January of 1988. The building was a traditional Edinburgh setting, the 6-tenement property constructed in 1925. The couple and their 1-year-old son settled into the 2-bedroom house and progressed through an uneventful year. Christmas arrived, and with it the family's first evidence that something was not right in their new home. It was the days leading up to Christmas when Mr. A complained of their young son interfering with his bath time routine that night. He stated that their son must have turned the bath taps off, resulting in a cold and half-full bathtub. Mr. A was enraged by the toddler's actions and insisted that his wife keep a better eye on him. The fact of the matter is that the young boy had not left his mother's side. He had not ventured anywhere near the vicinity of the bathroom that evening. 1989 arrived, and the instances of household instruments being tampered with continued. Although Miss A insisted that their son was not capable of managing to turn the bath taps off and reach to turn off light switches, his father disagreed. Over the coming months, steadily awkward chemistry materialised between the father and his young son. Somebody would blame anything slightly unusual on the youngster, and there was much to blame. Lights would be switched off in the dead of night, with the family waking up in the morning to no credit left in the electricity meter. Mr. A, in a vitriolic rage, would bellow at the unaware toddler each morning, blaming him entirely on the mysterious late-night events. The child's grandmother, who sided with her frustrated son, joined in with the accusations towards the youngster. It was almost as if something was turning them both against him, insisted Miss A. He was only small and could not have even reached the light switch, but both of them teamed up against him, she recalled. As the 1990s commenced, with it, the events began to form a more sinister pattern. The woman remembers that the room in which her husband and her occupied was always cold. Not damp, but cold, almost as if something within the room was keeping it within a constant low temperature. The family cat, Gizmo, refused to come within the region of their bedroom and hissed when bypassing the area of the bathroom. Possibly one of the most frightening incidents involved waking up each morning to a solid man's handprint visible on the bedside cabinet and sometimes windowsill, only to vanish as if whoever had left the mark had departed with her awakening. On a side note, her husband was not always present when this chilling action would occur, rendering her alone in the confines of the bedroom. Miss A became an active community member and would spend much time volunteering at the nearby Lochend Community Centre. Although interested in community issues, her main reason for her involvement was to be as far away from the property as physically possible while her husband was out at work. She remembers an unmistakable air of menace throughout the vicinity of the building about this time of the mid-1990s. A catalogue of ghoulish events descended across the street, specifically within the walls of the stair in which she lived. A tragic event would materialise one bleak afternoon. The body of a man discovered dead within the stairwell that day. Missy recalls the horrific scene as she returned home to a sea of blue lights and police activity that early evening. Her deceased neighbour discovered by a family member within the stair in which they lived. On another occasion, her child stated that he was too scared to climb up the stairs of the property. It was due to the presence of an elderly neighbour staring at him from the stair window from the same area that the tragedy had previously occurred. Enraged, she contacted each of the 5 separate neighbours. Still, when confronted, there was not one of the occupants who fitted the description of the menacing older man who had scrutinised her son from the stairwell window. In the autumn months of 1996, the terrifying events of the Wresselrig Crescent property came to a chilling crescendo. A woman selling trinkets around the doors visited the property and warned the resident of impending danger and disclosed other unknown factors within the family. The woman refused any form of payment from the tenant, but pleaded for her to ensure the children's safety from whatever resided within the property. In the lead up to the Christmas of 1996, the events, although stable and continuous, balanced out. They did not feature the same level of shocks as in previous years. Miss A insists that they were so sick and tired of the events they would have accepted any other property in exchange. Now, with a young daughter in the family, she would visit parks, friends and sit in the nearby Leith Links in the fading afternoon light, waiting for her husband to finish work and safely return home. She became used to the strange voices within the stair as she would struggle with the child's pushchair to the landing of her house. Each time, the persistent, angry conversation from above would result in nobody present to be seen. In the week leading up to Christmas, the family's luck would change. They received the offer of a transfer to a ground floor bungalow property. The new location, although not far from the district, was, in her words, far enough away from that terrible house. The days leading up to the move proved to be a nightmare. It was almost as if the house knew that we were moving and would constantly torment them with a dark feeling of dread. The keys of the new property arrived that Christmas Eve. They would have moved that day, but decided to remain to ensure that the 2 children could enjoy as pleasant a Christmas day as possible. She recalls visiting the zoo at one point that day, as opposed to sitting within the dreaded house. Excuses after excuses met the frustrated children as to why they could not play with the newly presented Nintendo games console. As the evening progressed and the family attempted to settle down for the night, all appeared well in Wresselrig Crescent. The 2 children, after an exciting day, retreated to bed happy after the day's Christmas festivities. They were relieved as the non-eventful activities of the day the couple set about shutting down for the evening and retiring to bed. Her husband, already in the bedroom, Miss A approached the corner of the living room to switch off the Christmas tree lights. It was at this point when she noticed something unusual. The closed curtains by the tree moved. They moved in a manner as if somebody or something stood behind them. The terrified woman could hear through the still of the Christmas night the distant sound of breathing from behind the curtains, the sound of a man growing louder with each terrifying breath. Petrified by the revelation, she attempted to back away from the dim light of the Christmas tree and call out to her husband. She could not. All she could do was watch in terror as the long velvet drape continued to move in the dim light of the corner of the room. Eventually, she managed to defeat the startling paralysis and scream with all her might. Her husband leapt from the bedroom and to the darkness of the living room. He reached for the light switch, the area now illuminated, revealing the image of his terrified wife cowering in the corner. Her trembling hand is pointing towards the long dark curtains by the tree. Slowly he approached the drapes and with a shaking hand reached out to open them. As the heavy velvet curtains slowly parted, both he and his wife stood stunned, yet not entirely surprised, to find that nothing at all stood by the bay of the windows. The terrifying events of that Christmas night in 1996 would be the last the family would experience in the foreboding Wrestle-Rig property. On Boxing Day 1996, they were gone. They moved the children into an uncarpeted and barely furnished nearby house, the home in which they still reside today. The new property was the answer to the family's prayers, and they have witnessed nothing akin to the disturbances of Wrestle-Rig Crescent ever again. Severing all ties off the street, the family were finally free from the nightmares of 1988 to 1996. Although curious as to investigating details of previous owners, she has remained reluctant to do so. In the 24 years since they moved, she has never ventured to Wrestle-Rig Crescent and the property ever again. During the interview, Miss A asked her now adult daughter about her memories of her time spent at Wrestle-Rig Crescent. She remembers little of her time there, and very probably best for all involved. I hope that you enjoyed this festive tale of terror, the final story of the year. All that is left is to wish you all a merry black Christmas and a suitably bloody New Year. I hope that we may meet again next year for more North Edinburgh nightmares.